Pete Ekman with the RoboZone podcast. We're in Reefscape week 2. I have two guys that I love having on the podcast every year that give me their unadulterated responses and reactions to Reefscape. So with that, let's get some introductions. John, go first. Tell us who you are, who you're with.
Yeah, I'm John Urin. I'm the former coach of Chimeras. I'm the current drive coach for 1684, as well as one of the prototyping mentors.
You threw me off there for a second. I was like, wait, former? What? Did you change? No.
Yeah, this past year I stepped down. So Bernadette's running the
You went
running the
across.
ship right now, and she's doing an amazing job. So
Yeah, you went across the hallway to strike that other strike. I keep
Strikey boys? No, I
strikey
did not.
boys.
I did not go across. I took a bigger role at work, so I'm a
Okay.
little more enthralled with that. So
Sure. And we see your digital displays behind you. We'll get to that because
oh
Corey
yeah,
brought something up last week that I got to ask you about.
okay.
Anyways, before that, we'll go to Mr. Shoemaker down there. Ben, please introduce yourself.
Oh man, calling me mister. That's a terrifying thought. So I'm Ben Shoemaker. I'm the lead mentor for Team 3655 Tractor Technicians out of Mason, Michigan.
I only called you Mr. Shoemaker because it says Mr. Shoemaker right there in your Zoom lens.
Oh, there we go. Must be my school ID still up there right there.
Yeah, see, I'm observant. So welcome aboard, guys. It's week 2. We're past the initial onslaught that is kickoff. So before we get to what your teams are doing and how you're approaching this, we talk about strategy. John, tell me what you thought about the Reefscape reveal.
Yeah, I was watching, I'm like, oh, that's crazy. We're playing 2019 underwater. This is so cool. Like we had a great year that year, so like for us, we were super excited. But that's kind of what it feels like. It just feels like 2019 underwater, and initially we thought the climb challenge compared to 2019 was gonna be a lot harder. And then after some testing and watching some Robot in 3 Days videos, we're kind of thinking it might be a lot easier than we initially thought.
Yep. And for those that are watching this and they say with 2019, that's deep space we're talking about. But thank God we don't have to deal with hatch panels because that wasn't fun
Not
that
fun for
year.
you, fun for us.
Oh yes, yes, yes. And but there's a lot more swerves out there in 29 or from 2019 to now. So a
Yeah,
lot more
that's true.
swerves, right?
That's true.
So Ben, tell us what you thought about the game reveal.
Yeah, I kind of thought the same thing. It was like, oh man, it's 2019. Some game elements look the same and some other stuff, but less cross traffic, defender on one side only. There's some differences definitely in the layout of the field, and then I think Swerve's the great equalizer, right?
Mhm.
That we're
Yep.
not trying to line up with tanks anymore. So and John, they did have a great robot in 2019. In that 2019 year, that was one of my favorite elevator designs ever. Um, so it's a pretty sweet robot.
So what
Thank you.
you're
Appreciate
saying,
it.
Ben, is some teams may go look at the Chimeras from 2019 and maybe borrow their
I
design.
mean, I know some teams maybe that I know maybe looked at a couple of those
Hey,
elevators, that's your
and
thought process.
if I can give any word of advice, if you're gonna copy our 2019 elevator, don't. It is uh we actually at the time we had a mentor who went to Kettering, and he came back from Texas. He actually brought the 148 prototype elevator. 148 was like just getting rid of a bunch of stuff.
Yeah.
So he actually brought it with him, and so that's what we based the elevator off of. But we used more off the shelf parts, and we ran into some problems that we didn't foresee that I think 118 or 118, 148 probably caught in their version. So, but if you notice that year 2019, 148 also actually went to a square tube or rectangle tube elevator. So they actually got away from the round elevator too. And then I can confirm that Chimeras are also not going to have a round 2 elevator this year. So
I thought about this at kickoff when I saw elevator. I thought elevator. I was going to reach out to you, John, and said, "Hey, do you have the CAD from 2019? Can I look at it? Because I
I think
remember the
it's
round tube."
I think it's
So,
on shape, but if anybody ever wanted advice on like what not to do, like I'm definitely the person to ask, or Aiden Storts on our team, one of our design mentors. He would have a lot of insight on little things to avoid and that type of stuff. So we'd be more than happy to field those questions if anybody's going to go that route. So
i.e., don't do it.
you could do it. 148 did it, and they did it very elegantly. So
Okay.
I would definitely look at both.
So you guys are, it's 2019. I could see a lot of similarities. When I saw the ball and I got the ball in my hand, like the kickball, I was like,
Mhm.
at least it's a little thicker. The material's a little thicker than it was from 2019 because that was basically one of those balls you go to Walmart or wherever, Myers, and they're in the big, metal racks that you kids get in there and start knocking them out and all that
Mhm.
stuff. But this is a little heavier, especially heavier too. So yeah, I could see a lot of similarities between the two teams or two
Mhm.
games, but at least we don't have something blocking the whole middle of the field. So
We kind of do.
kinda in a way.
Like that's a relatively long obstacle to the field,
Yeah.
right? Like,
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So John, tell us where your team's at. We've talked about the game a little bit, but where's your team right now? We're in week 2. So what are you guys at doing?
Yeah, so they did a bunch of different archetypes of different robots using Crayon CAD and Onshape. They had like 5 different concepts, and then as Robot in 3 Days was popping up, we were kind of comparing like what we came up with, what they came up with. So they're kind of in a heavy prototype phase this week and then this weekend, and then hopefully we're gonna have a moving chassis to try to get some times dialed in, as well as work on like some prototypes of like grabbing from the player station and that type of stuff. Um, so we're still like heavy in the prototype phase. Like we haven't like we're not committed to like one design yet. Um, we kind of copied the 1678 route of doing like an alphabot. So we're like trying to make like a prototype robot very rapidly. And then
Mhm.
some of those parts, like we know we're pretty confident, like we're happy with the elevator and we're happy with the drivetrain. And so that's gonna get moved over to CompBot. But the other stuff, like all the in between, the climber, the intake stuff, we're still kind of developing that right now.
Okay.
So
Ben, to I'll give you credit too. I was going to reach out to John. The second guy was going to reach out to you for your arm design that you used a couple years ago when we were
mhm.
placing the hats on top of, I call them hats, right? The traffic cones on top, because you had guys had a killer arm, and I could see that be very viable for this game too. So tell us where your team's at right now.
so we always at kickoff we start off with strategic breakdowns. We do point analysis. We never talk mechanisms on day one typically, and so we just talk about what does a good robot do scoring wise. And then in honesty, we had some other teams there. We were going over kind of like what does a good filler robot look like and some other things. And um, typically one of our projects after we do the scoring mechs is we do the scoring meta and conversation. We kind of look at what are attributes of winning robots. Are they small? Are they rectangular? Are they squares? What would a real robot like? Kind of advocates about them. And we totally blanked on doing that this year when we started. And we went, then we started talking mechanisms. And to be honest, we had a robot 90% done on CAD on Friday last week. And I just was not in love with it. So it was a couple of our design kids, and we kind of had a conversation and balled it up and we put it in the finish stand.
Oh,
Um, so we're back kind of a little bit, but I think we got a pretty solid look design. There's definitely some influences from 23, from your 23 robot in this one. And so I like that, but we're kind of in the same boat as John. We're pushing hard to get a alphabot together. And that's what we've typically done is probably carve alphabot with quick mechanisms on it, things we can change back and forth so we get the moves down, get all the geometry in place. And then, we're actually to try to beat everybody to purchasing parts that you need for
isn't that a
making
fact?
stuff.
That is a fact, Jack. If you're trying to find an
Yeah.
elevator right now, good luck. Good luck.
Yep, exactly. That was, I think we probably snatched up some elevator parts and then opted not into the elevator world as much.
Okay.
Um, but
Okay.
so that's one of those things you kind of have to do it, right? You gotta make your purchases quick.
Yes.
So, but yeah, we did a lot of work on we've done a lot of work so far on trying to figure out where different game elements fall in this sucker. Like, what are we gonna do without it? Is it gonna be important this way, that way, or the other? When does it become important? Because I'm sure a lot of you guys do the same thing. We also progressively build our season out of
Mhm.
what's it take in a quals, what does it take at a regional championship, what's it take if you get to world championships to be competitive.
Yeah, and some teams, I'm not naming teams, just want to make it to states for the very first time in their 14-year history. Just saying. That's our goal. John,
That's a good goal.
it's a good goal. It's an attainable goal. They've never
Mhm.
won a blue banner. We missed it by 2 points last year. 2 points. And
Yeah.
then we would have gone to states in the same year. But
Mhm.
achievable goals. We don't have the resources that both your guys' teams have. I know your guys' teams very well and up and down. You guys have great resources. However, we took our robot from last year, from the chassis up, took it off. We have a rolling chassis
Mhm.
today. So we have driver's practice going on just to get used to the second year of having swerve.
Yeah.
And then building out the field elements and getting used to the paths that are going to have to be done. Try to do as much as we can within our resources. So, John, back to some of the stuff that Ben said, right? What do you see? And I'll use the robot in 3 days. They're killing it this year. I give credit out to Tyler and the Fun Network. We're not competitors. We're brothers and battle brothers in the same way that we want to cover everything for first, no matter
Mhm.
who's watching these things, right? Um, they ranked today. I was watching their ranking of all the robot in 3 days. You know, they kind of went methodically of how to rank them. The number one was Penn State.
Yeah, I can see that.
Congratulations, Penn State on not knockout. They knocked it out, man. That was a home
Mhm.
run. So, what do you think about the robot in 3 days pieces, John?
I'm always back and forth on that because like there's a part of me that's like I like the Robot in 3 days stuff because like it's inspirational, people draw from it and that type of stuff. But now that like we like first provides a kit bot, right? Which
Hmm.
that in my opinion really raises the floor for a lot of teams. I would love to see like one of these like Robot in 3 days teams say, nope, we're gonna take the kit bot and we're gonna make it play another element of the game very
Okay.
easily. Like what is the easiest way to do that, right? Clint Bollinger and I were at lunch the other day. We are actually talking about this too, and he was saying he's like, yeah, that would be amazing to see them like take that step and go there, and I totally agree with him. Because like you have things like the Everybot and you have things like the Kitbot. The Everybot takes a little bit longer to come out with, obviously, because like they don't know the game yet, right?
Hmm.
Like first took into consideration like the Kitbot this year. I believe that was like on one of the blog posts.
Hmm.
So I'm pretty sure they do. Um, but they and you could see that and it works really well. Like the kitbot this year is really strong, and I just watched the everybot video and I think that's also really strong.
Really
So
strong.
I think there's a lot of you talk about costs and you talk about resources. I think those two robots are a lot easier to build than something like the robot in 3 days robots. Then you kind of have this next level, right? Where you have like, maybe you have some like really motivated students who did a lot of good fundraising over the summer and
Hmm.
currently still doing fundraising. Then you can kind of look at like the Rev concept and the West Coast Products concept, right? And those robots could be very competitive with lots of practice and, building the robots right away. So it's always like I'm like pro robot in 3 days, but then like sometime I'm watching, I'm like, like this just like it's taken away a little bit of it. But for some teams, it's good because it cuts a lot of the nonsense out for their build season, right?
Right.
But I'm really excited about the Kitbot and the Everbot this year. Like both those robots, I would love to have on an alliance with for sure.
So I like the Kitbot too, but I have to tell you that the originating is the Everybot, and it always will be the Everybot for me because I remember being a rookie. I remember seeing the Everybot, and I'm
Mhm.
like, wow, that really helped us in that first year as a rookie do that stuff,
But
right?
I think they're different things though, right? Like the Everybot is more geared to do multiple factions of the game,
Yeah.
multiple parts of the game, where the Everybot is to do multiple parts
Hmm.
out of the box, where the Kitbot is like, hey, just out of the box, like your first competition, you can like obviously it'd be good to do it beforehand, but if you showed up with just that robot, other teams would help you get a climber, get to that next step,
True.
show you Everybot
True.
video, right? So I think they're kind
Yeah.
of in different
I,
wheelhouses a
I
little bit.
agree with you. Where I was going with that comment is that we can all thank 118 for doing the
Oh,
Everybot because I
totally.
think
Yep.
that's how the Kitbot came in into play.
Hmm.
They were like, "Wow, this really helped teams," because a lot of teams were mimicking that and first said, "Hey, I don't know if they work with 118 when they do these things
Hmm.
as the Kitbot, or
I don't
the
I don't
I
think
don't
they
know how
do.
that
I
happened."
think there was a blog post or something on Chief Delphi a long time
Hmm.
ago when the Kitbot was first introduced and first mentioned like, hey, we're doing this Kitbot thing. It's different from the Everybot. Like they should both exist and they're just doing it because they can get sponsors to donate parts to it.
True.
So that
Hmm.
way, like when you get your kit, you can actually sorry, I'm like I got a cough today, so I'm like on a bunch of medicine. So like I'm like burping a lot. But when you get your stuff like day one, you can actually go through and you can build a
Yeah,
robot, right?
I
So
agree. I still give credit to 118. Thanks, guys,
oh
for doing
totally.
that.
100%.
So, what do you think about the robot in 3 days stuff, Ben?
I mean, I'm a big fan of stealing concept ideas out of those things. I think there's a lot of pieces. We were kind of bummed the Rusttown climber was one of the ones we'd mocked up and thought we were pretty crafty for coming up with the mechanism for climbing. Not quite exactly the same, a little bit of different manipulation of the cage, but it was like, oh, there's that over under leverage kind of concept, and so that was good. And so I think those are all good. Again. I like that they give a layout for things. I like that they give teams a great footing. I'd agree with John. I think there's a home for both Everybot and Kitbot and all the RA3D robots
Mhm.
because each one of them provides an opportunity. The one thing I'd always tell teams is to look at what your resources are, look at what your capabilities, your machining is before you make your decision. Because if you go, in service, if you go with Everybot, if you don't have access to CNC, you don't have access to some other things, you might have a harder time getting some of those parts made over time, at least in the history of the every bot. Um, and the kit bot, you got the stuff punched out for you already. And
Well,
so I think you got to look at kind of those numbers.
some suppliers have taken the EveryBot designs and also provided them on their website too. Like I know in the
Yeah,
past you could go to ThriftyBot or I think Anymart too, and you
Yep.
could
yeah,
actually buy EveryBot plates and then just
yeah.
put them right in your
And
robot, which is awesome.
that which I think is good too. And I know the first, like when I first started seeing everyone coming out and understanding that was like, you get your template layouts, you get all your different
Mhm.
stuff. And we always all try to help lower resource teams build those things. And I sat there and thought to myself on some of those original ones, like, man, I'm a CNC machine and I'm out of luck. And then, like you said, you start to see Andy Mark step up and go, oh, we can keep those plates out and offer them.
Yeah.
Oh, we can put that, you go back to I think it was in 2019. Oh, no, it's 22 or 22 the everyone 22, like that side plate panel there's like 600 holes in that thing, with rollers and stuff. And I'm like, oh, you tough to lay out. But again, resources also are more readily available. I think
Yep.
there's probably most teams probably have somebody with a CNC within stone's throw of
Yeah.
them. As long as you know how to reach out and ask for some help and everybody does the first thing and does it.
Yeah.
I
Right.
think that's always a good thing.
I
But
mean,
then the good thing I think with RA3D robots is some of them don't leave a ton of great adaptation places, right? Like that's where I like the Kitbot quite a bit is it leaves it open for teams to still do that creativity and that interpretation.
but Ben, to be quite honest, the robot in 3 days, the one thing I love about that too is they will have a competition with those robot in 3 days. In fact, it's at Kettering this
Yep.
year again, I think. And one of the things we looked at last year when we were looking at we still hadn't had a design. We wanted to see, hey, like the cranberry alarm. We used that as inspiration and then built from that
Mhm.
platform,
Yep.
right? It didn't look like it. It somewhat acted like it, but it was a flavor, right? But then you saw that robot competing way before you even had anything done and saw it was, wow, that is really viable. So back to what kind of like what John was is if you don't have the resources on your team to do all the prototyping, some of that prototyping's done and some of the actual like testing of the wheels and
Mhm.
we won't talk about swerve because it's there, right? It's this almost the standard now, but not
Well,
from a
they even put an adaptation in the Kitbot for you, right? Like the
right.
Kitbot has a set of directions. It's like if you want to buy Swerve, and I think Wesco or somebody was offering a kit that even updates it to a Swerve.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm sure
You
someone
get all the
is because
pieces.
that's how they make the money,
That's
right?
right.
Yeah, I think
Exactly.
West Coast and CTRE are providing that.
I think so.
Okay. Yeah, I'm just saying there's all kinds of inspirations, but I think you guys would agree with me as two teams. I see both your teams at a very high level every year. You guys are
Yep.
knocking it out of the park. I'm just not inflating your egos or bringing you on here just to try to get something out of you. Ben, you give me stuff for free anyways.
Right.
And now we have a resource, John. We have a resource that Ben is on Ben's
Travels
team, but
between
works
us.
in the same building as me.
Oh,
So
cool.
I have my own
Yeah.
used parts mule
Yeah, you got
that we're
your
calling it.
liaison.
You're
Yeah,
right.
I like calling him a mule. He thought it was
Yeah.
funny
He
when I
really
said it to
does.
him. So,
He might like liaison more. So
no, he likes mule. He likes mule. He's actually liking it. But what I'm saying is that you guys are very high levels. You guys have been around for a very long time. My team by number has been around 14 years. However, it's not a 14-year team, right?
Mhm.
There's teams that restart too, right? So from your guys' level, our barrier for people and as a previous rookie mentor, right? That level you have to try to achieve higher and higher,
Mhm.
especially, and this isn't against you but I remember making state championships as a rookie, getting to state championships, and not being picked for an
Mhm.
alliance. So all that money spent, all that effort trying to get there, and yes, it's great to make it there, but then not to be picked for playoffs is gun wrenching, and I don't ever want to do that. I said gun wrenching, I meant gut wrenching. Just
Yeah.
to, make sure we keep it clean. But it's like that. So one of the things, Ben, while we were waiting, and not that you were late, we just jumped on earlier, is we saw the West Coast products minimum viable product, or I want to keep saying agile terms, minimum competitive concept, as well as the Everybot. I saw those two while we were waiting, right? Everybot knocked it out again, can climb from the deep. I want to see that. I want to see that on rookie bots because I think that's one of the way the rookie bots can shine this year. To be quite honest, John thinks it may interrupt the flow of rankings at an
Oh, it
event.
definitely will, especially with 6RP now.
Yeah.
West Coast calls that the competitive concept now. So
Okay.
it's no longer minimum, it's the competitive concept. Which is
minimum.
cool.
I'll still
That's good
use
marketing. I like
Yeah,
that. I like
I
that
like that.
marketing.
Yeah.
Well
Yeah.
done. I have a team you can sponsor, West Coast products. So
A couple years back, it was they did call it the minimum competitive
They
robot,
did.
didn't
it
they?
was.
Yeah,
It was
yeah. They
You know that?
must have changed it for this
the year that
so.
COVID hit was the year
Yeah.
that they
Yeah.
did that big one. So yeah.
I'm looking at it right now, and it doesn't look minimally competitive at all.
No, not at all. In fact, it does everything,
It
including
looks very competitive, one could say.
putting the algae in I keep want to call it barracks. And I'm a
The
sailor,
barge.
man.
Yeah.
I'm a
The barge.
yeah,
That's the
the
other
barge.
sailor word you should know then.
Yeah.
There you
It's
go.
barrack. Oh, I was never in trouble, but good joke. But the barge, one of the only concepts that I've seen through Robot in 3 days that gets it in the barge.
Yeah.
And they're not robot. Well, I don't know if you call it robot in 3 days, but you know what I'm saying.
Yeah.
One
It's a
of the
competitive
designs you can
concept.
reference. Yes. I'm still going to say minimum competitive concept.
That doesn't look minimum to me.
I'm old school.
Yeah, like I said, doesn't look minimal.
Yeah, and there's always a competition between like West Coast products and Rev, of course,
Mhm.
because they're competitors in the marketplace, which is good because it inspires other people to do things
Oh,
too.
I think they're brother at
Mhm.
arms, like you said earlier, right?
Yeah.
Isn't that how that works?
Battle buddies.
Battle
call it
buddies.
battle
There you
buddies.
go.
Yeah. So you guys talked a little bit about where you guys are in the process, right? So let's talk about what you guys would expect to see at a district level winner and what would make a state level and then what would be worlds. I mean, you guys been around the block. You guys been multiple world championships, year after year. If you're not consistent, you're there right almost right there. So John, what do you think you'll see at a district winner? Or what should be the focus for district? What if you're trying to achieve the state levels and
I
then the
think
world level?
I think it's gonna be the same thing. It's just gonna be faster.
Okay.
Because like with this game, like I don't want to say it's straightforward because there's a lot of elements to it,
Mhm.
right? But as far as like scoring and that type of stuff, you have short cycle times. I listened to the last podcast and I totally
Mhm.
agree with you, Pete. Like, defense can win championships, like we saw last year, a championship.
Mhm.
So I think it's one of those situations where there is some like higher level strategy that'll probably happen when you get to the state level. But for the most part, it's all the district ones and twos and stuff. I think it's just gonna look like states, but a lot slower, like sometimes it has in the past with certain games. And I think this is one of those types of games. Like 2019, if you look at like 2019, like districts 1 and 2, like yeah, sometimes certain mechanisms weren't working, or maybe they weren't getting up to the third
Mhm.
platform or whatever. But then when they got to states, they were just doing all that stuff, but a lot faster. And so, in my opinion, I think it's gonna be that. I think this is one of those things where, like, yeah, there might be some teams who add like a deep cage arm, or something like later on, right? Because
Mhm.
they see more value in that. But with the 6 ranking points, like none of us have played a game with 6 ranking points before,
No,
so
no
we
one
really
has.
don't really have a good feel of how that's going to play out.
Sure.
Like I mean, I have an idea from just like doing rough math and guessing and that type of stuff, but I don't know until we actually go play a match. I think teams that are like for us, like we were looking at the deep cage and it's like, man, you could do 95% of that ranking point by yourself. Like that's probably worth dedicating a good chunk of your robot to more than just like a stick, right? Like if you're gonna do a stick, then maybe do some acquisition. Like the Everybot plates are really cool. Like that's neat. Like that helps kind of acquire the cage a little bit faster. So I could see like that being a little bit different is like
Okay.
teams will refine that stuff as they get further along. But for the most part, I think if you're at states and you're trying to put a deep cage climb on your robot, you're going to struggle, right? Because you're not going
Okay.
to be practiced with it. You're going to have problems, right? Unless it really is that just as easy as we saw in some of these videos. I was actually a little disappointed by how easy it looked in some of the videos, but in the videos it works 100% of the time, right?
Only
Like
it's just like social media. You only see what the good stuff is. You don't
yeah,
see the
exactly.
failure points.
So So it works 100% time in the video is like what we
Right.
always joke on our team with like prototypes and stuff. So when you actually get to trying it, it might be a little bit difficult, but I think it's just going to be speed. I think this game is
Okay.
like a lot like 2019, where at our first district, I think we placed like 5 hatch panels or 6 or something, or no, 6 would have been a rocket. I think we placed like 4 or 5, and then by the time we were at states, we were not only doing the rocket, we were also doing some on the cargo,
Okay.
the ship. So we're placing like 7 or 8 game pieces, right?
Right.
So
Nice
I think
humble
it's just
brag.
speed.
Nice humble
Well,
brag.
hey, lots of practice. That's
I
a
know.
lot of practice. Lots
So
of practice.
Ben, what do you think you're going to see? I mean, you run a district, right? You run a district that
I'll be at that district.
you are the
Yeah.
Superman. You are the Tom Nader. You're the younger, better looking Tom Nader. He is going to flame me as soon as he sees
Oh
this.
yeah.
If
Flip
he
it.
listens,
Send it to him, chat.
send it to him, chat. Yeah,
Right
there
there.
is no chat here, by the way. This isn't Twitch. But yeah, we'll get it to him. But Ben, you do a lot for First in Michigan, and I appreciate what you do. We couldn't do things without people like you. So, what do you think you're going to see at the district, like at your district event? What do you think you're going to see at the state event and world event?
Yeah. Well, I think you're gonna see a little bit of difference at the two. Like if you're gonna our district in Lansing, it's a week 4 and it's got some heavy hitters on like that. The roster there's not really feeling hard in fact when I looked at that sucker. And that compared to week 1 in Battle Creek, which is still got some really great and there's a ton of great robots in Battle Creek too. There's great robots everywhere. It's Michigan, come on, let's be honest. And and so when we look at that depth, but when we hit that week 1, I think John's kind of right. I don't think the game changes a ton. I think the pace changes a
Okay.
ton.
Yeah.
And you're going to see, your powerhouse teams and your teams that have gotten the robots together quick are going to have decent autos early on. And I don't like, I tried to think through this game, like some games, if you get ahead in auto, it's games that match.
Mm.
I don't think this is. I mean, what's the differential in talking a couple of points? That's
Yeah.
if you got to space a cycle or two out in teleop if you're fast driving. So I think that's a big piece to it. I think a lot of it's going to come down to speed in those first couple of weeks of who can do the actions and the extra things with the time to spare. But I think you're going to see probably mid-level. This 6 ranking point thing is a little bit crazy,
Hmm.
but did anybody else notice that if you get a tie, you only get one? So now ties are like, I mean, that's fine.
Yeah.
Like, you want to be tying.
But you could get 4 out of a tie.
You think it's fine with tie, but but you can get two and one, right?
Yeah.
Um, it's
So
that, it's those components that go in, and then I look at it though, and I think it's going to be continuous progression, and then really when you get to the state level, or even at the district level, you're going to see some teams playing defense, and then it leans into those teams that have no ground practice, right?
yep.
If you had a lot of ground practice and somebody comes down to play defense on you, it's probably not as effective as a team that didn't get time to practice. And then some of those higher level skills like the deep cage, you watch those in the video, they work all the time, but I'm a big fan of watching where the drivers are at when they're making those videos.
Mm.
And it's a lot easier to drive a bar when you're 2.5 feet away
Yep.
and instead of, 35 feet away through violence with time ticket down. So those are things that I think are going to be a big difference is who's got the practice time in, who can do it consistently.
Yep.
And I don't know if it's the game design recently or if it's the new elimination model. I just feel like floors become so much more important than ceiling as far as strategy goes and making it in a district level or things like that. You just gotta have inconsistencies.
All good points. I always take something personally away from each one of these episodes, right? And this one, you guys made me feel really good that when we purchased all our gearing for this year, I went to L4,
Mm.
right? And the reason I'm thinking that is it's been faster, and I put this order in before the reveal, right?
Yeah.
Faster. But all I have to do is slow it down for my driver in the beginning, but you can ramp it up because I truly think that defense is going to be a spoiler. I think there's going to be some really good robots, especially with one. You can only put one on the other side this year, which was a big change. We covered that last week. That if you get someone that can play lights out defense and just irritate the living crap out of someone, or two teams at the same time just by going back and forth. The faster you can get around that reef, the quicker you can get back to something because then you're playing the keep away, right? They focus on the other guy, we go get one, right? Strategy is going to be huge this year.
That's why we're
Huge.
doing a straight six with shifters so we can push through that defense
A straight six in line out of a
with
Jeep
shifters.
or what?
Yeah,
So you
just
can-
West Coast
well,
Drive, baby. Just straight
oh,
six, just pneumatic shifting,
You are not doing
5 gallon
pneumatic
tank.
shifting this year. I
Oh
like
yeah.
it.
We're only gonna focus on algae. It's gonna be the craziest 1684 robot you've ever
there's
seen.
there's
It's not gonna
breakout,
be
but
black. It's gonna be aluminum colored.
What?
It's gonna be
yeah,
Yeah.
wild.
To you better do it now, or
19
everyone's gonna
robot.
flame you for not doing it.
They can
So
flame me. I
You
don't
gotta
care.
dust off that 19 robot and just roll it out there. Oh,
you should have it on the rack somewhere. Go
Could you
pull it
imagine?
off and use it as your release video, just to
That
troll
was single
someone.
speed, but that was 6 Neos.
Yeah.
I can't even do that anymore. That's old
yeah.
technology.
So, do you think putting algae in the barge is going to be viable this year, John? Do you think we're going to see? Is that the difference?
What
Is
do you
that
mean
the difference
viable?
maker? When you
Like
when you talk
important?
about teams that can do everything and teams that are
Mhm.
really focusing on doing some things, right? There's always a next level thing, right? And I
Yeah.
think I think there will be progression of the game going forward, as the weeks go on, every year somewhat. But the one thing I can see a lot of teams that I've seen prototyping stuff, and even the robot in 3 days, no one concentrated on putting it in the barge, pretty much.
Yeah,
The Kowalkas did. I know I'm butchering their name. That Australian team, I'm just going to call it the Australian team,
yeah.
um, did that. They focused on a dual
Mhm.
swinging end effector. So,
Well, I think if you have the resources to do both, you might as well do both, right? Because they put two game pieces out there for a reason.
mhm.
From my personal perspective, this isn't a team perspective. From my personal perspective, I think it's better to be faster at other things than spend a ton of time doing like I'd rather be slow at algae and really fast at the deep climb,
Okay.
right? Or really fast at the shallow climb. Um, is my perspective. But what our team is doing and what other teams that I've talked to somewhat align with that. Like we're still in the prototyping phase, so we haven't taken a ball, right, and like mounted it to an elevator and then had it go up and down really fast to see what happens, right? Because it works in CAD, but you don't know until you actually see it on a robot.
Yeah.
But me personally, as like doing like the prototyping stuff as like the prototype mentor this year, I'm just really excited about the deep cage, like all the different ways people are doing it. Like I hope it doesn't turn into everybody just puts like an arm with two bars on their robot. Like I really like the way that every bot like aligns to it, as well as
Mhm.
like it's got a passive thing that clips through it and pulls it back.
Mhm.
And then as far as the competitive concept goes, like doing the same thing with the shallow climb, it just went up to it and lifted. Like it
Yeah.
was like fast. So I think the differences you'll see is that alliance can put a couple more coral, put another algae, then go climb and get those points. Um, versus somebody who's like, hey, we have to break at 20 or 30 to go
Mhm.
climb. So
Right. Especially like last year, putting the note into,
mhm.
I can't even remember what's called because we didn't do it,
Yeah.
into
It
The
was
amp,
in the amp. No, not in the amp, in the
no,
speaker,
that was the term.
the
Tracking
trap,
stage.
the trap, the trap,
trap.
the trap.
We should
Yes.
play charades.
We should play
Which
charades
again,
next
well, which
episode.
again, like you think this game, I don't think has a skewing element to it as much.
Right.
Mhm.
That there's always been the last couple of games there's been a ranking point skewing element that kind of messes with the way games stick out sometimes, right? Like go to 22, you could have just stuffed that low goal and got your RP every match and ranked high, but you had no chance of winning in
Right.
the end because you just didn't put up the numbers.
Yeah.
And there are a lot of teams that did the trap. There were definitely some lower scoring teams that did trap this ranked high
Yes.
and just didn't have the firepower to win an event. There's some elite teams that did both,
Mhm.
but we that was one of those we gave that trap up because we just didn't have the footprint to get it.
But
Right.
I think the big thing between the trap and like this year, we're adding the 6 RP, like really, I think it flattens it out a little bit and it
Me
makes
too.
it like losing less punishing. But like with the deep climb, or deep cage or deep crab pot, whatever you want to call it,
crab pot.
You can do 95% of that by yourself, right?
Yes.
Like you can like all you need is somebody to park. And guess what? If they die at the start of the match, if both your partners die, you could spend 10 seconds driving and pushing their robot all the way over. Well, theoretically, as long as, they're not some crazy like X swerve whatever thing like buried into the carpet. Well, we will because we'll have shifters, but you push their robot all the way over into the deep cage, and then you climb the deep cage, and then you just did 100% RP by yourself.
Yep.
Like compared to the trap where it's like you could do 60% of it and it was really hard,
Mhm.
and you still need 40% from the other robots.
Yeah. I think what First is doing with this, and I'm just my own personal opinion is it's trying to make more things fair across the board. So it's not just
Mhm.
about winning the match, it's about achieving certain things in the match so you can get an RP.
Yeah.
So those rankings, it's going to be harder when it comes to playoffs and picking the right partners. And scouting is going to be very, 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 very important this year. Very important.
It might
Very.
it might
Absolutely.
be easier because like with it being flatter, like you
Mhm.
might have like because so many robots can obtain so many different ranking points, so many different ways. Like the top eight might actually be more robust instead of it just being really strong on one side.
You're right.
Like everybody up there could just be really strong. So as if you're picking the top eight, like, Rip being number eight, but if you're picking them like 1 through 7, like you're like
Mhm.
potentially like that's a lot stronger maybe. So, but we don't know until we play it, right? So,
Yeah, we don't. But I was going along the lines of making sure that you do your pit scouting correctly to know
mhm,
what and to validate that the robots, because everyone, when you do pit scouting and you ask kids, hey, what can your robot do? I watch my students ask other students, and everyone wants to talk everything. It can do everything. It can do
mhm.
everything. But you get on the field, and we all know that just because you say it does everything, it doesn't. So
Yeah.
when it may be a difference when you get into line selection, is that you want a robot that can do everything. That might be one of those things where it's not it focuses on one thing because the game is so dynamic in
Mhm.
every kind of strat that maybe the one thing that, like I said, the one call out that a lot of people don't focus on is putting that ball in the barge at the end. Or
Yeah.
what if they can climb the shallow and put a ball in the barge at the same time? Who knows what we're going to see? We don't know yet, right?
Yeah.
So it's one of those, what makes you different than the others? That's my point
How
from
many
a scouting
robots are going
perspective.
over this year? How many tipped robots? What's your
Tipped
guess?
robots, a ton.
Tipped up,
That's
tipped
gotta be a
just
lot.
all over. Not even getting hit, right? Just hitting
I say
themselves.
we see 5 to 10 first week.
That's gotta be a lot.
Oh, it's
I
gonna be
just
a
hope they
lot.
don't fall into the reef. That's the thing that like
Yeah.
you
I
fall
would
over, hit
worry.
the ground, that is what it is, right? You press your
You
life
fall in the
over and
reef,
move
you
on with
can.
your life. You fall into the reef, that's a different story. Like
Yes.
that's like
That could be like a 20-minute field delay trying to just get that sucker out of there, right?
Hey,
yeah, especially if they move and they like pull down
yeah.
stuff. Like I'm
Ben,
Oh, because
what
you know they're gonna try to get out, and they can
yeah.
track down on it. And
so let's pick
oh,
on Corey Walters for a second. How many
What?
robots are we going to see decapitated because they ran into the cages too hard and they didn't put robustness on their frame?
now, well, you know what's interesting? You guys watch in all the videos they show that low cage and they swing it around like a mace, like it's just flying around. And we watched a couple of different ones. I can't remember who did the one, but they loaded up a
Yeah.
cart and they hit it. They ran it into it. It was interesting to see the shallow cage. That swings around like crazy because it's going to pivot, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But the one on the chain, the deep cage, you can watch a wave go up that deep cage chain and dissipate all that energy.
But I'm telling
It's
you,
really cool.
my co-mentor built our cages to spec
Okay.
with the proper things. Those things are heavy.
Yeah, I bought
Oh
one
yeah.
from
They
AndyNarc
are
and they're heavy.
heavy.
They are
And
heavy.
you take a robot going at a good clip of speed, you better
Oh
build it robust. You better,
yeah.
better, better, better.
Absolutely. Well, that's the thing is like, there was a lot of chatter right away. Like, are they going to get stuck on the outside of the field? I think they're just going to smash things.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah, I was gonna say I don't think you'll see decapitations. I think you'll see like big dents, right? Like somebody will have an
yeah.
elevator and they drive face first into that thing, and it's gonna like dent and fold and cause a lot of
Ro
issues.
Robustness needs to be, don't do it out of 16th inch. If you're doing an elevator, I do it out of eighth. Just saying.
Yeah. Well, there's ways to mitigate it too, right?
Sure.
Like if you do a
Deflectors.
lot of light stuff, yeah, like a roll cage, right? Like
Yeah.
they've been doing stuff like that forever. So there
Yeah.
there's definitely ways to like
We'll
mitigate
Mad
that.
Max it. We'll
Yeah,
Mad
yeah.
Max Beyond
Yep,
Thunderdome it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You just
exactly.
don't go across the field.
I will
Waterworld.
shrink my side by side and we'll mock that up and put it
Right
out there in
there.
the field.
But yeah, no, I think those are all things that you're going to see in that is this concept of really high reach, tippy. I mean, we're going 26 by 26 chassis base, like
Yep.
but we're also going to tip test that sucker for a while
Yeah.
and make sure like our goal's 85% of the weight under 8 inches high off the ground. So if I can do that, that's great. Then I should be okay.
I told my coders already when as soon as that elevator reaches half of the first stage, you automatically slow the robot down so I don't have to worry about driver error to tip
Yep.
it over. Right?
Oh, absolutely.
So just planning. Anyone who's listening to this better be taking notes because I guarantee you we're right.
Yeah, it's a lot. It's
Oh yeah.
a lot of testing, right? Like you definitely want to give it the full beans when your all elevators all the way up in a controlled setting before you go to a competition and do it on a field, right?
Yep. I
Put a
can
little
see
bit
the
of sidewall.
testing. John, I can see testing with teams doing this and they take their algae balls and when they see the robot tip over, they just toss it right underneath it. It bumps
Yeah.
back up.
My
Airbag
algae
robot.
balls are too valuable for that. We have like foam. We'll throw foam under there. But
Okay.
There you
I don't want to pop an algae on that.
All right.
go.
Well, guys, I'm not going to take up too much of your time because it is week 2. We're all busy. I want to thank you for coming on board. We've been at this 40 minutes and we could do this for another hour. But the perfect time for a podcast is 30 to 45 minutes.
Oh,
So we're
Oh,
going to keep it to that. And we'll follow up
perfect.
with you guys as the season comes on. We'll get you
Awesome.
back on board, see what's going on. So with that, John, tell us again who you are, what team you're with, and how we can follow the team.
Yeah, so I'm John Muir, former coach of Team 684, the Chimeras out of Lapeer, Michigan. I'm currently the drive coach and prototype mentor. You can find us on any of our socials. All of it's like first 1684. You'll find me on the podcast when Pete wants to continue his John streak of having another John on the podcast. And yeah, check out our YouTube. We're gonna be posting a lot of videos there pretty soon. So
Okay. Ben, you're up.
Ben Shoemaker, I'm the lead mentor director for 3655 Tractor Technicians out of Mason, and you can follow us at tractornation.org. So we'll be posting on our Facebook and all those good things.
Don't refer. And the Ben is the younger, better looking Tom Nader. I know I'll get a phone call. John,
like
as we part, I have
Yeah.
a very pointed question for you from a Corey Walters, only
Uh-oh.
because so you can send him a pointed text after this.
I already
Is
have it pulled up
that
on my phone.
the Cypress? I love the Cypress things. Your company builds the ones in the back that we now can see what we need to see when it
The
comes
team
to counting
displays.
down. The what?
The team displays.
The team displays, yes.
Yep.
Is it true that there is a missing LED in the team displays?
A missing LED.
Yes.
Not that I'm a. Oh, are you talking about the 9s that look like 3s? Yeah, that's fixed.
Okay.
Yep, that's fixed. Don't worry about
Okay.
that. It's fine. It's all
You-
good. It
you
may
can-
got 9 in their team number. Don't worry, it's all taken care of.
You
So-
can go text Corey Walters right now about that.
Hey, listen, I employ a lot of first alumni
Yes,
and
and we
current
thank you
first
for doing
members
so.
at Cypress, right?
Yep.
Cypress has 15 people out of our company. All of us have came from a team. Most of those teams have been 1684 and 5460, and neither of those teams have 9s in them. So in the future, there will be better quality checks and more engineering. So
Proper testing.
we didn't have a robot in 3 days to build the team displays for us. So
Next year, how about
There
we
you go.
put Cypress on the hook for doing a robot in 3 days concept next year?
I don't know about that. I retired, so like, I'm already. I stepped back.
Okay, all
So,
right. We will check out with you guys in a couple weeks. Thanks for coming on board.
Yeah. Thanks for having